all wearing like suits and tie. This is a pretty funny image. Hello everyone! Thank you for clicking on this video and welcome to this video. This video is all about the Beatles album, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. It's a mouthful. And I wanted to, I guess I'll call it a review, but it's not entirely a review because this album is truly one of the most iconic albums of all time. In fact, Rolling Stone has named it the #1 best album of all time. So, you know, obviously it's fantastic, but I more so just want to talk about this album. And I do have it right here in front of me, the vinyl, which I absolutely love having this one on vinyl. I have quite a few Beatles records on vinyl, and this one in particular, it just feels right listening to it on a record player. I mean, it really does. So if you have a record player, I would highly recommend getting the vinyl of this one. The reason why I want to talk about this album is because I've been listening to a lot of music from present day artists recently, and something you may not know about me because I haven't shown it too much yet on my channel. If you've watched some of my other videos, I love listening to older music. Honestly, I would say I listen to older music more often than current music, to be totally truthful. And the Beatles are absolutely no exception. I mean, everyone should listen to the Beatles. And if you haven't heard a full album by them, I really feel like this should be the album you listen to from them. And I'm gonna go into a few of my favorite tracks and why this album in particular is so iconic to me personally. And some of the reasonings that I have probably sound very similar to a lot of other reviewers if you have seen other reviews or read other reviews, but I want to talk about my personal experience listening to this album and why I think it is truly so iconic. Okay, so why this album? So let's go back in time, and it is June 1st, 1967, and this album has been released and it is rocking the world for so many reasons. So the two albums before this album, which were Rubber Soul and what was the second one? Revolver, I believe. Those two albums came out before this one, and that was when you could start seeing a turning point in the Beatles music. They were starting to stray away from some of their very kind of cutesy lyrics and really starting to dig into more storytelling and maybe some more, I don't want to say graphic's the wrong word, but more like real life topics beyond just romance topics, honestly. And people were starting to notice the shift in them as a band. And then this album came along and just was truly unlike anything that has ever been produced in music at that time, to be quite honest. First of all, the layout of this album. If you listen to this album, and the reason why this one in particular is so great on vinyl is because it really is meant to be listened to from beginning to end. This is what you would call a concept album, a storytelling album, in that it just really all flows in the order that it's intended to be, which is why you need to listen to it from like the start to finish. Obviously, if you want to skip around, if you listen to it on Spotify, I mean, that's going to happen. But when you do listen to it all the way through, complete in its entirety, you do realize how the songs truly do flow from one right into the other, which that in itself was pretty huge. And on top of that, the different types of sounds that you hear in this album, it's absolutely crazy. I mean, the sitar is one that started to kind of come into the Beatles music even before this album, but it comes in real hot on this album, on top of just other sounds from other cultures of around the world. And that's just truly not something that people in like the Western part of the world were really touching at that point, especially in a rock and roll band. It just was so revolutionary and original and unique with the sort of sounds that they put on the album. And also, one thing that made me really think about this album, so you might have seen some of my other videos. I've been listening to and working through The Weeknd's music right now. And The Weeknd is not the only artist presently who does this, but really complex productions or music production or unexpected production in music is something that people love now. And truly, I think this album kind of started that. Like, they have such unexpected things that happen in each of the songs. The songs take different twists and turns. I'll go into a few songs in particular that really are kind of chaotic in how they just are production wise. Like, they really don't make any sense at first, I think, but really it makes perfect sense in all of the world. And I think that was probably just so... it had to have been so insane for people that were around when this album first came out, hearing that for the first time. I mean, they had quite literally never heard anything like that before. And the Beatles, being the Beatles, they were in a position where they were just like, we're gonna do what we want to do because we're the Beatles. Why not? Two songs production-wise that in particular I think really show just the dramatic shifts that happen within the song, or dramatic elements occurring that were totally unique, would be Within You, Without You, and obviously A Day in the Life, for sure, which is the last song on the album. The most popular songs from this album that most people would know if they even haven't heard the whole album would be With a Little Help from My Friends, which is actually a Ringo song, as in like a Ringo vocal, which that doesn't happen super often, and also Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, and that song has been covered by 1,000 people and it's truly timeless. But truly, this whole album is so timeless in the concept and the production, and just having all of these different, honestly, kind of just music influences packed into one album. And not only the music was so progressive and unique, the whole imagery around this album was definitely something that had never been done before. Let's go back to the album cover. I mean, this is crazy. Like, this is not something that you would see, especially when it came out in 1967. So here we got, they're all here, not in matching outfits, in super flamboyant colors. But then you have like old school looking Beatles, like their former selves over here where they were very matchy, very polished. And you've got just so many iconic figures that they show on here. Like Marilyn Monroe is over here, and just all of these people in general, and figures, public figures, they just threw them all on here. I think the point of it, or how I interpret it, is this is Lonely Hearts Club Band. So you can go through all of these people and figure out what their lives were, and it makes sense. That in itself was just so probably bizarre for people to see. Like, it was just so not ever thought of at that point. And I mean, look at these outfits. I'm just gonna cover my face with the Beatles right now. This is a huge change from all wearing like suits and ties. This is a pretty funny image. From all wearing like suits and ties, now they're wearing this. Like, that is, it's just so cool, honestly. And not only that, I think the Beatles as a band at this point, they were pretty burnt out, and this was really the turning point of when they had decided, we're not performing live anymore, we are not touring, we just want to make art. That's what they cared about. I think they hit the point where they're like, this isn't about hit making, we are adults with our own lives, and we're gonna come together and make art as a band. If you haven't heard this album yet, and if you were to listen to it with headphones, you would just need to remind yourself that this was created in 1967. And when you really think about that, it is absolutely mind-blowing. I'm gonna go ahead and talk about a few of my favorite songs from the albums. I'm gonna go ahead and talk about a few of my favorite songs from this album. I'm not gonna go in great detail, but honestly, it's gonna be hard to pick a few because they're all really great. But I truly love the opening. It's short and it's sweet, but it's awesome, and that is Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And if you see me looking down, it's because I'm actually just gonna read them off of here. I think it's a very appropriate intro for kind of the experience the album is going to take you on. So that was really awesome. I really like She's Leaving Home. It tells a definite story that I think, especially thinking about maybe being a teenager or a young adult in the 60s, living in England in particular, living in the UK, and kind of what that dynamic really looked like for people in that generation, from like parents to their children. I think that that's a really cool song lyrically, but also musically just beautiful and very sad. Within You Without You is so cool. That is very Asian influenced in the types of music and the sounds they are using, and that I think what is just so monumental to have happened at that point. And it's just beautifully produced. It's gorgeous. I also thoroughly enjoy listening to Lovely Rita, A Day in the Life, which closes out the whole album, and that is a genuine masterpiece, honestly. And I do enjoy Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band Reprise, which is very short, but it's like just like a genuine rocker, and I do like that a lot. But A Day in the Life is such a genius way to close this album out, and I absolutely adore that song. So, do I think this album deserves to be the best album in the world, to have that title? I do. I really do. It's so good to explore these older albums that have been around for decades that sound like they could have been made like now. I mean, it's really cool to kind of challenge yourself, if you haven't already, to really listen to these complete albums from musicians that have been around forever, because when you do that, you start to really appreciate just how maybe some of your present day musicians that you love so much really have been able to create the music that they want to create, because they have been influenced and seen these iconic musicians before them do it, and it has inspired them to create as well. When people want to become musicians, it's probably because they've heard some really great music early on in life that had, or maybe later in life, but they probably have heard some really great music from some other artists that left them feeling really inspired and left them feeling like, I want to do that. So that's why I am a huge advocate in listening to music from the past, because it just, yeah, it's like a full circle thing, honestly. And I feel like I am just rambling way too much. So I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to give it a thumbs up. I would really appreciate that. And go ahead and hit subscribe if you haven't done so already. And let me know in the comments if you have listened to this album, and if you have, what songs you love from the album, or if there's other albums from the Beatles that you love. Obviously, they've got a lot of them and they're all great. So go ahead and let me know in the comments what you love by the Beatles. But thank you for watching, and until next time, bye.